He looked like he was about to swing on me. And the crazy part? I hadn't done a single thing to him. Not that night. Not ever. Inside Vibe Lounge, the bass was hitting so hard the walls felt like they were breathing, pulsing in and out with every beat the DJ dropped. Lights strobed overhead, the air smelled like perfume, sweat, and expensive liquor, and everyone in the building thought it was just another Friday night in Atlanta. But nobody, not one person, had any idea that the next 15 seconds were about to turn into the most explosive moment the city had seen all year. 1 second, Kirk Frost was in the VIP section, clinking champagne glasses with young Joc, both of them laughing at some joke lost in the music. And the next second, glass shattered. A bottle flew through the air like someone had launched it with a slingshot. Security froze. People ducked. Someone screamed. And right at the center of the chaos stood Lil Scrappy, shirt half open, chest rising and falling, eyes burning like two open flames. His finger was pointed straight at Kirk. "Say that again. I dare you." His voice tore through the music, cut through the noise, and sliced straight into the tension in the room. Joc shot up from his seat, ready for whatever was about to happen next. Kirk didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't blink. There they were, 3 men, 3 histories, 3 egos, locked in a triangle of pressure so dense it felt like something physical in the air. You could almost touch it. You could almost hear it hum. Phones came out instantly. Screens lit up. The club turned into a forest of cameras. But even with all those lights shining, nobody knew the whole truth of what they were watching. Nobody knew what had been boiling for years, silently, privately, secretly. Then the first push came. Then the words, the ugly, unfiltered ones, flew out. Then a fist. Then another. And by the time security finally moved in, someone was bleeding. But that wasn't the story. The real questions were the ones echoing in everyone's mind. What pushed Scrappy that far? What exactly did Kirk say? And why did Joc suddenly switch sides in the middle of it all? People thought this was just a club fight, just some drunken celebrity drama caught on camera. But they were wrong. This wasn't random. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a moment that came out of nowhere. This was the eruption of years of jealousy, resentment, backroom conversations, whispered comments, unspoken offenses, and buried grudges. What happened at Vibe Lounge was just the opening scene. The real story started long before that night. Kirk Frost moved through Atlanta's music scene like a shadow, always there, always watching, always calculating. He didn't talk loud. He didn't brag much. He didn't need to. His power didn't come from noise, it came from the quiet. The moves he made were always smart, always planned, always 2 steps ahead of everyone else. He built his empire with strategy. Brand deals. Publishing plays. Silent partnerships. And yes, a long list of scandals he somehow survived. Cheating rumors. Business drama. Questionable decisions. Through it all, Kirk walked out clean, or at least cleaner than he should have. But underneath the polished businessman image, he held on to things. He remembered what people said. He remembered who doubted him. He remembered who underestimated him. And nothing stuck with him more than one specific man. Lil Scrappy. Scrappy never really respected Kirk. Not really. Not from the beginning. Where other people saw a businessman, Scrappy saw someone who hid behind his wife's success. Someone who talked bigger than he moved. Someone who didn't earn his stripes the way real street guys did. One day, years back, Scrappy was in a studio session, joking around, talking loose like rappers do when they're relaxed. Someone asked him about Kirk and he said, low under his breath, "Man. Kirk a paper gangster." He said it soft. He said it without thinking. He said it not knowing that Rasheeda's cousin was standing right there. 2 hours later, that sentence was floating around Atlanta. The next morning, it reached Kirk. And he never forgot it. He didn't confront Scrappy. He didn't make a scene. He didn't even comment publicly. He just stored it, deep, like a quiet burn he planned to repay someday. And Scrappy? He didn't even realize he had lit a fuse. Not yet. Young Joc was the bridge between both men. The connector. The neutral one. The guy who could talk to anybody and still walk away with a smile on his face. In the daytime, he'd sit with Kirk discussing marketing deals, promo ideas, brand collaborations, the grown man business side of the industry. At night, he'd be in the studio with Scrappy, laughing, recording, vibing, catching up like old friends. Everyone thought, Joc is just cool with everybody. But behind that cool personality, there were things happening that nobody fully understood. Scrappy believed, with his whole chest, that Kirk had sabotaged a distribution deal he was working on in 2022. No paperwork ever confirmed it. No one ever admitted it. But Scrappy believed it. And that belief was enough to keep the tension alive. On the other side, Kirk believed that Scrappy had been a little too friendly with Rasheeda during a rough patch in their marriage. Again, no proof. No receipts. Nothing concrete. But suspicion alone was enough to build a wall. Then came the VH1 cast list, a private list of who might be cut after the reunion show. The rumor? Joc whispered Scrappy's name to producers to protect his own spot. Whether true or not, the damage was done. Scrappy's trust broke. But he didn't confront Joc. He didn't argue. He didn't call him out. He just quietly changed the way he looked at him. And when a man like Scrappy changes the way he looks at you, even if he doesn't say it out loud, you feel it. This wasn't new tension. This was old, very old. Back in 2019, at a winter party, Scrappy was feeling himself, performed a freestyle, and dropped a line about a man hiding behind his wife's empire. Everyone there knew exactly who he meant. That same week, Kirk posted a cryptic Instagram story. Some of y'all bark louder when cameras roll, but you don't bite unless it's safe. Again, everybody knew the target. But neither of them said names. That's how celebrity grudges work in Atlanta. No one addresses anything, until everything explodes. And it did. Rasheeda had announced a new boutique opening. Joc was on the promo team. Several celebs got invited. Guess who didn't? Scrappy. No text. No DM. No explanation. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't ignorance. It was a message. And Scrappy received that message clearly. So when he walked into Vibe Lounge that night, uninvited, unexpected, already a couple drinks deep, the tension in the room rose before he even reached the VIP section. He wasn't there for the music. He wasn't there for the drinks. He wasn't there for the vibe. He was there because something inside him had snapped. And even DJ Technique, who'd worked in nightlife for 20 years, said later. Man, the vibe shifted when Scrappy walked in. You could feel it. The storm had arrived. And when Scrappy, Joc, and Kirk finally locked eyes, it was over. The energy changed. The room thickened. The pressure skyrocketed. And when the explosion happened, it wasn't sudden. It was inevitable. The club was loud, painfully loud, but somehow in that single moment, when Scrappy's eyes met Kirk's, all that noise disappeared. It was like someone muted the entire room. Even the bass felt like it stopped hitting. Everyone around them felt it, the shift in the atmosphere. The light seemed harsher. The air felt heavier. People stopped mid-conversation, mid-dance, mid-drink. Because that kind of eye contact only happens between two men who have history. Not beef. Not drama. History. Joc tried to step between them at first, not physically, but with his presence. A small gesture. A quiet warning. A silent, "Not tonight, bro." But it was too late. Everything unspoken over the past few years, the rumors, the disrespect, the misunderstandings, all of it rose to the surface. Scrappy moved first. He took 3 slow steps toward the VIP section. Not fast. Not aggressive. But powerful, like each step carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid conversations. Kirk didn't back up. Didn't sit down. Didn't even blink. He just watched Scrappy approach, jaw clenched, fingers twitching by his side, the only sign that he wasn't as calm as he looked. Scrappy stopped right in front of him. "Say that again," Scrappy said, voice deeper than before. "I dare you." Kirk raised his eyebrows slightly, almost amused. Joc's heart dropped. Because he knew, in that tiny gesture, Kirk had made his decision. He wasn't backing down. What exactly triggered the explosion? A sentence. A simple sentence. One that nobody watching the viral video could hear. But many people in the VIP section heard it clearly. Scrappy took a half step closer and said something low, something about loyalty, something about disrespect, something that cut deeper than any shove or punch could. The exact words. One person later claimed Scrappy said, "You've been playing with my name for years." Another person said Scrappy accused Kirk of ruining his deal. A third person swore Scrappy brought up Rasheeda. No one really knows, except them. But whatever Scrappy said, Kirk didn't like it. Not at all. Kirk leaned forward, his voice sharp and cold, and he responded with the exact line that broke Scrappy's last thread of control. "Man, shut up. You ain't relevant unless you fighting somebody." Boom. That was it. That was the grenade. Scrappy's whole body tensed. His face changed. His breathing shifted. Joc stepped forward instinctively. "Scrap, chill." But Scrappy didn't chill. Not even for a second. It started with a shove. A heavy, two-handed shove that pushed Kirk backward into the velvet rope of the VIP section. People gasped. Drinks spilled. Somebody dropped a phone. Kirk stumbled, but caught himself. Joc reached out to grab Scrappy's arm, but Scrappy jerked away with surprising force. And then Scrappy swung. A wild, emotional punch, the kind that comes from a place deeper than anger. A punch fueled by frustration, betrayal, embarrassment, and ego. He didn't connect, not fully, but he grazed Kirk's jaw. Kirk reacted instantly. Not like a fighter. Not like someone emotional. Like someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. He lunged forward, grabbing Scrappy by the shirt collar, and everything turned into a fast, chaotic blur. Security shouting. People screaming. Camera lights flashing like lightning. Joc pulling one person, then the other. Tables shifting. Bottles falling. At one point, Scrappy slipped, someone else fell, a bottle smashed on the ground, and the whole scene turned into a tangle of limbs, curses, and movement. Security finally charged in, pushing through the crowd like offensive linemen. They grabbed Scrappy first, because he was the loudest. Then they grabbed Kirk, because he was the calmest, and calm men are often the most dangerous. Joc tried to mediate, screaming. "Stop. Stop. It's not worth it." But it was too late. Scrappy's nose was bleeding. Kirk's lip was split. Joc's chain was broken. The entire club was in chaos. But here's the thing. None of this was really about a fight. None of this was really about that night. This was about years of silent disrespect. Business moves gone wrong. Personal lines crossed. Rumors that never got addressed. Suspicion that never cleared. Words said to the wrong people. Jealousy that built up in the dark. Friendships that slowly died. People saw punches. But what they didn't see was the deeper truth. Scrappy didn't want to hit Kirk. He wanted to be heard by Kirk. Kirk didn't swing because he hated Scrappy. He swung because Scrappy made him feel small in a way he never forgot. And Joc? He didn't want either man hurt. He just didn't want to pick a side. But fights like these force you to choose. And Joc did, even if he didn't say it out loud. Security dragged Scrappy toward the exit, his shoes scraping the floor, his voice echoing through the club. "Don't play with me. Don't ever play with me. This been years, man." Kirk wiped his lip, still breathing hard, eyes locked on Scrappy even as security held him back. Joc stood between them, chest heaving, hands shaking, because he knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. This wasn't a fight. This was the beginning of something bigger. Something darker. Something deeper. Because what happened inside that VIP section was not the final chapter. It was the spark. The true story, the real story, was still buried under layers of history, betrayal, and secrets that had never been spoken out loud. Not yet. Not until now. But here's where things take a turn no one expected. Because just when you think the situation has already hit rock bottom, it gets even worse. As the messages continued to surface, people started noticing something. A pattern, a strategy, a level of manipulation that went far beyond simple gossip or drama. This wasn't just two people arguing. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a calculated setup, a deliberate attempt to paint an entire narrative that only benefited one side. One message in particular changed everything. She wrote, "I'm not doing this for attention. I'm doing this because people need to know who he really is." And that line alone sent shockwaves everywhere. Because suddenly, the focus shifted from screenshots and accusations. To motives, to intentions, to why she chose this exact moment to expose everything. People asked, why now? Who was she trying to warn? What was she trying to destroy, or protect? While the audience was scrambling to pick a side, she dropped another bombshell. A voice note. And in that voice note, you could hear the emotion. Rage, hurt, confidence, and a strange sense of satisfaction, all mixed together. She said, "You think you can lie your way out of this? You think people don't see the truth? I told you the day would come when everything would be exposed." And with that, the story was no longer about betrayal. It became about revenge. The kind of revenge that brews for months. Maybe even years. Until the perfect moment arrives. But here's the twist. While she was releasing message after message, he remained quiet. Completely silent. No response. No statements. Not even a denial. And that silence became louder than any screenshot. People started questioning. Is he guilty? Is he scared? Or is he planning something even bigger? Because silence can mean two things. Defeat, or preparation. And nobody knew which one it was. But then, just when the entire situation reached its boiling point, something happened that no one saw coming. Someone else stepped into the story. A third person. Someone with their own set of receipts, their own perspective, and their own reasons for speaking up. And what they revealed didn't just complicate the story. It rewrote it. What they brought forward wasn't just proof. It was context. And context can turn a villain into a victim. Or a victim into a mastermind. This is where the whole narrative flips upside down. Because the truth isn't always loud. Sometimes the truth is hidden in the quiet. In the things people don't say. And the next revelation. It's the one that finally exposes who's been telling the truth. And who's been playing everyone from the start. The moment the third person stepped in, everything shifted. Up until now, the entire story had been a tug-of-war between her claims and his silence. But this new voice, this new presence. It didn't take sides. It didn't choose comfort. It came with one goal. To expose the parts of the story neither of them wanted the world to know. This person didn't drop vague hints. They didn't post emotional rants. They came with facts. Timestamps, screenshots, call logs, and a memory sharp enough to cut through every lie. Their first message was simple, but deadly. If we're going to talk about the truth, let's talk about all of it. And suddenly the entire audience went silent. Because now we weren't dealing with gossip. We were dealing with a witness. Someone who had been there. Someone who had seen things unfold from the inside. Someone who wasn't afraid to burn bridges. Their receipts didn't just confirm parts of her story. They also exposed the pieces she conveniently left out. For the first time, the world saw both sides of the chaos. Here's what they revealed. There were messages she didn't show. Calls she pretended never happened. Promises she made, and broke. Nights she reached out first. Moments where she played the victim. Even when she was the one pulling the strings. The narrative suddenly wasn't so black and white anymore. She wasn't the innocent truth-teller she claimed to be. Nor was he the monster people painted him as. This was a story of two people. Locked in a toxic cycle. Feeding off each other's anger. Each one praying the other would break first. But the third person didn't stop there. They revealed something far more shocking. Something that changed the entire timeline. She had been planning the expose months before she ever dropped the first screenshot. There were drafts of messages. Saved audio notes. Screenshots prepared long before the big reveal. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction. This was a strategy. A slow-cooked plan. A revenge blueprint disguised as honesty. And when this truth came out, the internet snapped. People started questioning everything. Was any of this real? Who manipulated who? Was her entire story engineered to destroy him? And what pushed her to finally execute the plan now? But before anyone could process the truth, the third person delivered the final blow. If he speaks, everything she said will fall apart. And she knows it. That one line alone changed the entire momentum. Because now the attention wasn't on her anymore. It was on him. On the man who had stayed silent through all the chaos. Was he staying quiet because he was guilty? Or because he was holding back something that could shatter her entire story? The world didn't know yet. But one thing became clear. His silence was ending soon. And when he finally breaks it, the truth won't just come out. It will explode. For days, he said nothing. Not a post. Not a story. Not a single word. And the longer he stayed quiet, the more people assumed he was defeated. Caught, exposed, cornered. But what nobody realized was this. His silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation. Behind the scenes, he was gathering everything. Every message, every call log, every moment she thought he'd forgotten. While the internet argued. While she celebrated her victory. He was building something far more powerful than a rant. He was building the truth. And then, without warning, without teasers, without drama, he finally broke his silence. No anger. No insults. No emotional breakdown. Just one simple statement. If you want the truth, here it is. And what he revealed didn't just shake the story. It rewrote it. Because the first thing he exposed was the one thing nobody expected. She wasn't the one who walked away. He was. He ended it. He cut ties. He put boundaries. And she couldn't accept it. Her expose wasn't an act of courage. It was an act of revenge. He revealed messages where she begged him to come back. Voice notes where she apologized. Screenshots where she admitted she exaggerated out of anger. Messages she conveniently deleted. Before showing the world her version. But the real shocker. He had proof she was coordinating everything with someone else behind the scenes. There were conversations of her planning which screenshots to post. Who to send them to. What captions would get the most attention. And when to drop each bombshell for maximum impact. This wasn't honesty. This was a campaign. A rehearsed, scripted, step-by-step strategy. Designed to destroy his character. And paint herself as the victim. And when he exposed all of this, the internet flipped. People who were defending her went quiet. People who attacked him started questioning everything. Because now the story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about manipulation. It was about obsession. It was about someone who couldn't handle being left behind. But he didn't stop there. He shared one final message. A message that changed the entire tone of the situation. A message she sent late at night. After her whole expose was already public. You know, I didn't want it to go this far. Just talk to me. And that one message. That one line. Proved everything. This wasn't about justice. This wasn't about truth. This was about attention, control, and not wanting to be ignored. But now the world finally saw the full picture. And the question everyone started asking was, what will she do now that her entire narrative has collapsed? Fight back? Stay silent? Or unleash something even darker? Because the story wasn't ending here. No. It was only getting more dangerous. She didn't stay silent. Of course she didn't. Because someone who builds an entire narrative, someone who crafts a whole image around being the victim, cannot afford to suddenly be exposed as the villain. So instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, instead of letting the truth settle, she doubled down. She came back louder, angrier, and more dramatic than ever. But this time, her rage wasn't spontaneous. It was strategic. Within hours of his truth going viral, she posted a shaky, emotional video. Eyes red, voice trembling. As if she were moments away from breaking down. Except she wasn't breaking down. She was performing. Every tear was perfectly timed. Every pause was intentional. Every sentence was crafted to redirect sympathy back to her. She didn't address the evidence. She didn't deny the messages. She didn't explain the late-night text begging for a second chance. Instead, she said the one line. That instantly flips the internet. Everything he posted was taken out of context. A classic move. A safe move. A move designed to confuse the audience just enough to keep her followers loyal while avoiding accountability. And when that didn't fully work, she escalated. She dragged friends into it. People who weren't even involved. People who didn't want to be part of the drama. Suddenly, you had cousins' friends, ex-roommates, old co-workers, all posting vague messages like, "Y'all don't know the real story. Trust me, she's the one hurting. You think she'd lie about something like this?" Not one of them addressed the evidence. Not one showed receipts. Not one had first-hand information. But their goal wasn't truth. It was distraction. Create noise. Create confusion. Create sympathy. Her entire strategy was simple. If she couldn't prove him wrong, she'd try to make people doubt him. But here's the thing. When someone is lying, their story always starts to crack. And her cracks showed fast. Because while she was trying to act innocent online, Behind the scenes she was spiraling. She was messaging mutual friends, begging them to take her side. She was calling people at 3 a.m. Rambling, crying, switching stories. She was trying to control a narrative that had already slipped out of her hands. And then she made her biggest mistake yet. She tried to threaten him. Not physically. Not directly. But emotionally. She told him that if he didn't delete his truth, if he didn't stay silent, if he didn't let her version dominate the internet, she would drop something even bigger. But there was nothing bigger. Nothing real. Nothing true. It was a bluff, a desperate one. She underestimated one thing. He wasn't scared anymore. He wasn't controlled. He wasn't manipulated. He wasn't emotionally trapped. He finally realized the truth. Her power only existed when he stayed quiet. The moment he spoke, she had nothing left. And just when she thought she'd regained control, just when she thought the tide was turning back in her favor, something happened online she never expected. People began investigating too deeply. They found old screenshots, old lies, old contradictions. Her web of manipulation started unraveling from every angle. And suddenly, she wasn't the victim anymore. She was the villain of her own story. But this downfall, this unraveling, this wasn't even the peak. Because what happened next didn't just expose her. It exposed someone she never wanted to be connected to. Someone who had been pulling strings quietly from the background. And once that name surfaced, everything changed. While everyone focused on the drama between them, while the internet obsessed over screenshots, while both sides were throwing emotional punches, there was someone else watching quietly. Someone who had something to gain. Someone who had something to hide. Someone who had been controlling the narrative like a puppet show. And when the internet started digging, it didn't take long before his name surfaced in the comments. In threads. In private group chats. Her ex-best friend. Not just a friend. The one who knew everything. The one who held every secret. The one who suddenly popped up online, defending her like he was her personal security guard. But the timing was suspicious. He hadn't spoken to her in months. They had fallen out long ago. Yet suddenly he was everywhere. Commenting, posting, making TikToks. Acting like he'd been by her side through everything. And then things got even stranger. People noticed the exact same phrases. In her posts. And his posts. Same wording. Same punctuation. Same timing. Almost like someone was writing for both. Then someone leaked a DM. A DM that showed the truth. He was the one who convinced her to expose everything. He was the one who told her she could go viral from it. He was the one who helped her plan which messages to post. And which lies could hit harder. This wasn't just manipulation. This was coordination. A two-person team. Trying to destroy a man. For attention, clout, and revenge. But here's the part nobody expected. He wasn't doing it for her. He was doing it for himself. Because a year earlier, he had a falling out with the same guy she was now attacking. A messy argument. A business deal that went wrong. A personal grudge he never let go of. So when she came running to him with heartbreak, anger, and desperation, he saw an opportunity. She wanted closure. He wanted destruction. They became partners in chaos. But the internet found out even more. He was the one who edited her screenshots. He was the one who removed her desperate messages. He was the one who helped her rehearse her emotional videos. He was the one who told her, "You don't need truth. You need a story people will believe." And she listened. Because she trusted him more than anyone else. Because she thought he was helping. Because she didn't realize he was using her pain as fuel for his own revenge. But the mistake they both made was assuming he wouldn't fight back. They thought he would stay silent. Play humble. Let the internet drag him. They thought wrong. Because once the truth about the puppet master came out, people started digging even deeper. They found old messages where the ex-best friend lied for attention. Old drama from other friendships. Stories of him stirring conflict just to insert himself into other people's business. His reputation crumbled instantly. And when he was exposed, he panicked. He disappeared offline. Deleted posts. Turned comments off. Blocked anyone who questioned him. But she was left standing alone. In the middle of a storm she never expected. Without him guiding her. Without someone feeding her lines. She suddenly had nothing to say. For the first time. She looked guilty. She looked lost. She looked scared. Because now the world wasn't asking, who's telling the truth? They were asking, what else is she hiding? What else did they plan? What was the real motive? And most importantly, what is she going to do now that her partner in lies is gone? But the answer would take the story in an even darker direction. Because the moment she realized she had been used, manipulated, and abandoned by the person she trusted most, she turned her anger toward the only person left. And she made a decision that would change everything. When she realized her so-called best friend, the mastermind behind the chaos, had vanished and left her to take the fall. Something inside her snapped. Not the kind of snap that comes from heartbreak. Not the kind that comes from embarrassment. This was different. This was rage fueled by humiliation. Because for weeks, she had believed she was in control. She believed she was the one exposing the truth. She believed she was leading the narrative. But now, she wasn't the leader. She wasn't the mastermind. She was the pawn. And pawns hate realizing they weren't the queen. So instead of reflecting, instead of apologizing, instead of admitting she was manipulated, she turned her fury toward the only person left to blame. Him. The very man she tried to destroy. The man she lied about. The man who finally defended himself. In her mind, it was suddenly his fault. His fault she trusted the wrong friend. His fault the internet turned against her. His fault her lies were exposed. His fault her entire story collapsed. And with that twisted logic, she made a new decision. A darker decision. A dangerous decision. She was going to retaliate. Not emotionally. Not online. But in real life. She knew his weaknesses. She knew his routines. She knew the people around him. She knew exactly where to strike. To cause maximum damage. Without touching him directly. And that's what made it terrifying. Because her first move wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't something you'd expect from someone who lives online. It was quiet. Calculated. Precise. She started contacting people around him. Old coworkers. Past collaborators. Mutual acquaintances. Anyone with even a tiny grudge against him. She pitched a simple idea. Let's take him down together. She dangled clout. She promised exposure. She hinted at bombshells she still had. She played the victim card like she was auditioning for a role. And at first, it worked. A few people. People who barely knew him. People who always envied him. People who wanted attention. Jumped in immediately. They didn't have real stories. They didn't have real evidence. But in a world where drama spreads faster than truth, they didn't need any. All they needed was a lie that sounded real. And a platform that craved chaos. She was rebuilding her army. But here's the twist. While she was plotting her comeback, she didn't know something critical. Someone from her own circle had switched sides. Someone who saw the manipulation, saw the obsession, saw the dangerous escalation, and realized she was spiraling into something she couldn't come back from. This person privately reached out to him and said the words that changed everything. She's planning something bigger. Protect yourself. He didn't panic. He didn't lash out. He didn't feed the fire. He did what she never expected. He stayed calm. He stayed silent. He stayed strategic. Because he understood something she didn't. Her new revenge wasn't power. It was desperation. And desperate people always make mistakes. But the real shock, her next move, wasn't about him at all. It was about someone else. Someone he cared about. Someone innocent. Someone who had nothing to do with any of this. She crossed a line most people never recover from. And when she crossed it, she didn't just start a new chapter of the story. She started a war. By the time the dust from the nightclub had barely settled, the tension between them had already metastasized into something far larger. What started as a personal clash, a battle of egos, had transformed into a war that threatened everyone in their orbit. The city, the internet, their mutual circles, all became battlefields. And in this battlefield, no one was safe. She had crossed the line. And now, everyone could feel it. Friends were choosing sides. Followers were picking allegiances. And media outlets, smelling blood in the water, were circling. This wasn't just social media posts or screenshots anymore. This was manipulation in real life, subtle but effective. And potentially catastrophic. Her attacks weren't just emotional, they were strategic. She knew where to hit to cause maximum damage. She knew the friends and associates he trusted most. She knew the events he'd attend, the places he'd be. She knew exactly which rumors would spark attention. And which half-truths would plant doubt like a seed in the minds of the public. And she began deploying them. Suddenly, it wasn't just online chaos. It was whispers at events, anonymous messages sent to his collaborators. Even fake tips to journalists. Everywhere he turned, someone was questioning him. Doubting his character. Questioning his intentions. But here's the thing, he wasn't blind to any of it. He watched. He waited. He calculated. Every lie she planted. Every rumor she spread. He traced back to its source. Every whisper, every secret leak, was being catalogued. Because he knew something critical. In war, the one who remains calm under pressure. The one who knows the battlefield better than the enemy. Ultimately wins. And while she was spreading chaos, while she was rallying allies, she was creating her own vulnerabilities. Mistakes began to appear. Contradictions in her stories. Conflicting timelines. Leaks that didn't match her narrative. And then, the public started noticing. People who had once supported her began questioning her motives. People who had cheered her actions began turning skeptical. And slowly, like a tide reversing its course, the support she had counted on began to crumble. But she didn't stop. She escalated further, trying to strike where it hurt most. The people he loved. Private messages. Rumors. Subtle threats disguised as warnings. It was psychological warfare. And for a brief moment, even he felt the pressure. But he didn't panic. He didn't react emotionally. He stayed calculated. He understood one undeniable truth. When someone is desperate to win at all costs, their desperation blinds them. And that desperation would be her undoing. Because the moment she overreached, the moment she tried to control what she couldn't control, everything she had built, her story, her influence, her leverage, would start to collapse around her. And then the real twist came. Someone she thought was loyal to her, someone she had trusted to carry out her schemes, betrayed her. They quietly tipped him off. They showed him the plans, the messages, the moves she had been orchestrating behind the scenes. And just like that, the war wasn't one-sided anymore. Now, he had the upper hand. The moment she realized this betrayal, she panicked. And she wasn't going to stop. Because once desperation takes over, people will do things they never thought possible. And now, the war had only just begun. The next moves, the next lies, the next betrayals were going to be far more dangerous, far more personal, and far more public. This wasn't just about truth or lies anymore. This was about survival. About power. About leaving the other side broken. And the question everyone started asking was, who will fall first? Who will be exposed next? And who, if anyone, will survive this war unscathed? By now, the entire city felt the tremors of what had started as a nightclub scuffle. It wasn't just about Scrappy, Kirk, or Joc anymore. It wasn't even just about her. This was a full-blown network of secrets, lies, and manipulation. And everyone in their orbit was starting to get caught in the crossfire. Because when the stakes get high enough, people reveal their true colors. And not everyone's true color is worth seeing. She had been playing a dangerous game. But she underestimated one critical factor: time. Because every lie has a half-life. Every secret eventually comes to light. Every alliance built on deception eventually collapses. And in her desperation, she began making mistakes, small ones at first. A misplaced DM here. An unguarded phone call there. A slip in an interview that didn't match her previous story. But as the hours turned into days, the mistakes snowballed into evidence. Evidence that journalists, bloggers, and fans alike were dissecting. Screenshots that contradicted her public statements. Messages that exposed the depth of manipulation. Videos showing moments she claimed didn't happen. And then came the private tips. People close to her began quietly reaching out to him. Telling him things she didn't know anyone else could see. Telling him where she was planning her next moves. Who she was trying to influence. And which lies she was trying to cement as truth. It was like watching a chess game, where one player finally sees the opponent's strategy. And while she was panicking, scrambling, and trying to regain control, he stayed calm. He documented everything. Every message. Every post. Every move she made. Because he knew the most powerful weapon wasn't revenge. It was truth. And he was about to unleash it. Meanwhile, the public spectacle intensified. Fans, fueled by the viral nightclub footage, leaked screenshots, and cryptic posts, started piecing the puzzle together themselves. Threads on Twitter exploded. Videos on TikTok gained millions of views overnight. Reddit forums lit up with theories, some wild, some chillingly accurate. And everyone began asking the same questions. Who is really telling the truth? Who manipulated whom? Who will survive this? The pressure began to show on her. She tried controlling the narrative through interviews. Through emotional videos. Through vague, cryptic messages. But the internet had already started fact-checking her every word. And that's when the breaking point came. She didn't just panic. She lashed out. Not online. Not verbally. But in real life. A confrontation. A direct attack. A move that would change everything. And it wasn't just against him. It was against the people closest to him. Her desperation had become dangerous. Unpredictable. And it was clear she would stop at nothing to try to regain control of a story that was already out of her hands. At that moment, the war that began with a simple misunderstanding in a nightclub had escalated into something far bigger. Something that had no clear end in sight. Because when lies meet desperation, and truth meets patience, the fallout isn't just public embarrassment. It's personal. It's messy. And it can destroy everyone caught in the crossfire. And in the midst of this chaos, one fact became undeniable. No one was untouchable. No one was safe. And no one could predict who would emerge from this war unscathed. By the time the nightclub brawl had made headlines, the conflict had evolved into something far more sinister than anyone anticipated. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It wasn't just drinks thrown or bruised egos. It was a full-on psychological war, a battlefield where every thought, every move, every whisper could be weaponized. She had realized that brute force wouldn't win her the narrative. Public outbursts weren't enough to control perception. So she pivoted, shifting tactics to something far more dangerous: mind games. She started targeting allies, associates, and even mutual friends. Subtle questions, half-truths, and insinuations were her weapons. She didn't need to confront people directly. She just planted seeds of doubt and waited for them to grow into chaos. Meanwhile, he stayed calm, observant, and strategic. He had learned early in life that people often reveal their intentions through their smallest actions. A slip of the tongue. A delayed response. An overreaction. He monitored every move she made. Every post on social media. Every DM leaked, every conversation he could trace. And then he began to strike, not with physical retaliation, but with exposure. He let her make mistakes. He let her lie, manipulate, and attack. All while documenting everything. Every move she made, every word she typed, every interaction she orchestrated, became part of a mountain of evidence. And as that mountain grew, so did her paranoia. She began questioning her allies. Distrust spread among her circle. The people she once counted on started stepping back. And the moment that trust broke, she was left isolated and vulnerable. But the psychological warfare didn't stop there. He began feeding carefully curated information to the public. Nothing blatant. Nothing directly accusatory. But enough to shift public perception subtly in his favor. Fans and followers, hungry for the latest drama, began noticing inconsistencies in her stories. They questioned her motives, her timing, her authenticity. And the more she tried to control the narrative, the faster it spiraled out of her grasp. At the same time, the media caught wind of new leaks and started digging deeper. Investigative journalists discovered previous conflicts, old business deals gone wrong, and private communications that contradicted her public statements. Every discovery made the story darker, more tangled, and more compelling. Meanwhile, she doubled down. She escalated the war, attempting to strike where it would hurt most: his reputation, his relationships, even his business interests. Rumors spread about secret deals, betrayal, and manipulation. Anonymous tips and social media leaks fueled the chaos. And yet, he remained a step ahead. He countered not with aggression, but with calculated patience. He used her own schemes against her. Every lie she planted, every manipulation she attempted, was catalogued, verified, and saved for the perfect moment. And the moment finally came. With a carefully timed release of proof, messages, and evidence. He exposed the depth of her manipulation, her reliance on her former puppet master, and the dangerous escalation of her tactics. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was devastating. The public shifted almost overnight. Allies began abandoning her. Fans questioned her motives. The narrative she had tried to control for weeks collapsed like a house of cards. And through it all, the psychological impact was undeniable. She had spent so long trying to control everyone around her, only to realize that she was the one being controlled. By her own desperation, by her own lies, and by the carefully orchestrated patience of the man she sought to destroy. In the end, she faced a brutal truth. Manipulation may win temporary battles, but strategy, patience, and truth win the war. By now, the fallout from the nightclub brawl and the subsequent psychological warfare had reached a tipping point. This wasn't just a war of words. It wasn't just public opinion or social media chaos. It had become a full-scale unraveling, a collapse of alliances, trust, and carefully constructed reputations. She had spent weeks orchestrating a network of manipulation. Every whisper, every rumor, every lie was designed to destabilize him. She had thought herself in control. She had thought the chessboard was hers. But she underestimated one thing: the weight of consequences. The evidence against her was accumulating. Every lie she had spun, every manipulation she had executed, was now a weapon pointed at her own credibility. And while she panicked, trying to patch holes in her story, he remained calm, deliberate, strategic. He revealed selective truths at the precise moments that maximized their impact. Not all at once, never all at once. He understood timing. He understood optics. He understood the human mind. Every time she tried to strike, he countered without lifting a finger. Every secret she exposed, he had already anticipated. Every narrative she twisted, he had a documented proof to unravel it. Meanwhile, the public spectacle had escalated. Fans, once divided, were now forming clear camps. They debated, speculated, and created narratives based on incomplete information. The drama had moved beyond entertainment, it was now a cultural obsession. Bloggers, vloggers, and news outlets dissected every leaked message, every social media post, every video clip, turning each piece into content for the masses. And amidst the chaos, she made a critical mistake. She underestimated the people closest to him. The friends, family, and collaborators who had silently observed the entire ordeal. They began feeding him critical information. They began revealing her strategies, her manipulations, and her true intentions. In one crucial move, a previously loyal ally of hers quietly handed over a folder of proof. Messages. Emails. Hidden communications. Everything she had used to try and control the narrative was now in his hands. The tide had turned. And yet, she refused to back down. She doubled down. She tried to escalate further, attempting more audacious moves, trying to reclaim her dominance in the story. She reached out to journalists, attempting to leak selectively curated truths that would cast him in a negative light. She attempted to manipulate witnesses, sway opinions, and pressure people into submission. But the problem was simple. The battlefield had changed. Where once she held the advantage, now she faced a man who had anticipated her every move. And as the pressure mounted, as the evidence stacked against her, she began to crack. Not visibly, not publicly, at least, not yet. But internally, the panic was palpable. The desperation was consuming. The realization that she was no longer in control began to dominate her thoughts. And then came the public blow. He released an airtight compilation of messages, evidence, and documented proof. A timeline that not only dismantled her narrative but exposed the depth of her manipulation. It wasn't just a victory, it was a masterclass in strategy, patience, and psychological warfare. The internet exploded. Fans shifted allegiances almost instantly. Bloggers praised his meticulous documentation. Her credibility crumbled. Allies quietly stepped away. And her plan, built meticulously over weeks, collapsed like a house of cards. At this point, the war had escalated beyond personal feuds. It had entered the territory of life-altering consequences. Relationships strained to the breaking point, professional reputations teetering, and trust irreparably damaged. She had played her hand. And he had been waiting, calculating, observing. The lesson was clear. In wars of manipulation, patience and strategy always win over impulsive aggression. But while the world watched, there remained a chilling truth. The war was far from over. Because in a battle like this, the fall of one player doesn't end the game. It only shifts the stakes. It only opens the door to deeper secrets, new betrayals, and even more explosive revelations. And the question now became: who would strike next? Who would rise from the ashes? And who would be consumed completely by the fire they started? The dust had settled. The nightclub lights were off. The cameras no longer rolled. But the echoes of the war were everywhere. Kirk Frost, Lil Scrappy, and young Joc were no longer just figures in a viral clip, they were symbols of a storm that had swept through Atlanta's music scene, leaving reputations, friendships, and trust in ruins. For Kirk, the victory was quiet but absolute. He had survived the chaos. He had documented every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal. And in doing so, he had reclaimed control of the narrative. His empire, though shaken, remained intact. The world had seen him under fire, and he had emerged strategically unscathed. For Scrappy, the lessons were costly. Years of resentment, grudges, and impulsive reactions had culminated in a public unraveling. The momentary rage that had fueled the nightclub confrontation had become a cautionary tale. Anger without strategy leads to defeat. Though his reputation suffered, he walked away wiser, aware that control, patience, and evidence outweigh emotion in the battlefield of betrayal. Joc, caught in the middle, had paid the price of neutrality and secrecy. His attempts to mediate, to remain neutral, were exposed as complicity. The public questioned his loyalty, his judgment, and his integrity. He learned, in the harshest way possible, that being in the gray area is often more dangerous than taking a side. And as for her, the architect of manipulation, whispers, and chaos, she had been exposed completely. Every scheme, every lie, every secret she thought would remain buried, was now laid bare. The world saw the danger of desperation, the fragility of control, and the consequences of overreach. She had played the game thinking she could control everyone, but in the end, the game controlled her. The city itself had witnessed a modern drama. VIP lounges turned into war zones, social media erupted with theories, and gossip became reality. But beyond the spectacle, something deeper emerged. The reminder that power, influence, and relationships are fragile, and that truth, carefully documented and patiently revealed, always finds its way to the surface. In the aftermath, the three men and everyone involved were forced to rebuild. Alliances were reconsidered, trust had to be rebuilt, and egos adjusted to the new reality. The scars of this war would linger, but the lessons were indelible. The final truth. Actions have consequences. Lies are temporary, but evidence endures. Rage is fleeting, but strategy wins. And though the nightclub fight, the leaks, and the manipulations had captivated the public, it had ultimately been a story of control, patience, and resilience. The real victors weren't the loudest voices, the most impulsive reactions, or the viral clips, they were those who had mastered the art of navigating chaos with calm precision. As the city moved on, the story remained a cautionary tale. For anyone chasing fame, influence, or revenge. Remember this night, remember this battle, and remember that in the end, the truth always comes to light. The nightclub clash was over. The war, for now, had ended. But the lessons? Those would echo forever.